Hey everybody, this is Brad Dyke saying hi, how you doing? Ready for another go around? Cool. Well, today is a side project to help my son get into the business of IT and building out solutions for local businesses. And it pertains to a local garage that has a point of sale system that's becoming antiquated. I built it a long time ago. It's definitely seen better days. It's just older hardware getting kind of worn out. So we're reinventing that strategy so that we can provide the owner a more streamlined system. It's a little bit smaller in design. It's going to cut 35-40% of the total usage requirement out of the equation. Plus we're going to do some really cool things. So let's jump into that now so you guys can have an idea of what the plan is. Okay, so basically what we have is we have an accounting system which we're using a highly redundant small form factor chassis, which is identified principally as a Dell Pro Max Micro FCM 2250, and it's an i5 based platform that is specifically focused on just doing some generalized accounting, maybe some automotive supportive sales kind of functionalities as well. But principally, it comes from a tower that was much bigger down to a much smaller form factor, and that was our goal because it really does have a fairly limited role in the business. The other thing we're going to be replacing along with the accounting system is going to be the point of sale system. So here we have the Ultra 7, and it is also identified as a FTC 2250 series with the processor stack, latest generation release. And with that, the cool thing about this is they also have a DVR system, kind of like mine right there, but not as secure. But it's a BNC network platform, and so we also need kind of a racking strategy with that, and that goes to this guy. Now, as you can see, it has doors on the left and on the right, all lockable and secureable. And then it's basically a small factor form 19U footprint, and it's designed to house those two machines back there, which will go sideways, which is okay. And then, of course, that's to help with the better cabling access exit, because we don't care how it presents itself externally, because it has a door on it that nobody will see anything. But we want good solid airflow, good solid control, cable control. And as you can see up here, we have a fan that runs in the background. There'll be a power strip which will go across on a 19U 1U strap right across the back. That's going to be kind of tricky to do because of the nature of that footprint, but it is doable. And then, of course, we have this shelf here which will handle the workload. Plus, we have gap space here for air and availability for other objects which could be added later. Like, for instance, a USB drive that's going to be periodically transported out for alternate site backup. But all in general, this is a pretty sweet little box. Ran about 300 and change. And as you can see, its mounting strategy is really simplistic. It has basically mounting gaps here and here, and another set down on the bottom. As you can see, there you go. And it also comes with, of course, screws, latches, and attachments. And of course, as always, Velcro straps for ease of cable management and so on. Now, with this, the fact that we've got two systems independent of each other, each equally crucial in their own capacities, but nevertheless still isn't as critical as you would think. The key thing about these systems is accessibility. Okay, so control accessibility can now be refocused by using a new kind of KVM strategy, which isn't really new. It's a USB HDMI output. Now these outputs have 4Ks or digital outputs on the back, but I have a converter that converts them over to HDMI to save money and put them on this KCEV 4K HDMI USB 3.0 KVM switch. Now this one only has 4 ports, but I can, as you can see here, I can switch modes right there, and then I can click over to the other unit, and this will give me the ability to bring these two boxes out of the equation and just leave it basically for the overall. Matter of fact, I think I went to sleep. Yep, it did. I'll have to turn that off. but it will come up here. There it is, and it's operational. Now the thing about KVMs is they do mess around with the active power state of the USB outputs. So I'm using temporarily a little switch hub here just to focus all my stuff. But right now I'm going through the stage of testing all the ports and interfaces to make sure I got 100% functionality. Now the cool thing about this port is it allows you to completely detach away from these boxes. You don't have to get to these boxes to connect anything up. They are connected via USB output here on the back. And that back section also has the USB output here, which allows you to be able to connect other devices right at your desk while you're doing your typing, writing, and so on, and you don't have to worry too much about anything else going on requirements-wise to keep it going. Now, you do need to set the power sleep modes. I would turn those off. Let these just run as is because they are accounting systems and that's their function. So with that, we'll go ahead and test connectivity here and access. And I use a temporary account called PC Admin as I do build outs, but then after a 48-hour burn-in cycle, I flip them over to the customer's names. I always recommend a good standard on your test loops. That way anyone in your family or any of your fellow teammates can very quickly go in and discern that, okay, there's something going on here and we need to take care of it. Having a set of passwords and user accounts are always the standard. Greatly streamlines that process. Dramatically streamlines that process. Now, we got both systems logging in, and this is the first time they've ever been logged in. So this is a clean footprint. It's good to go. I will initiate a master backup so we can very quickly roll back to this image if we need to. These are very redundant models. These are both built in a RAID 1 pairing. So this one has a second drive on it for capacity and for alternate backup processes, which we'll use a piece of software later to work with. Now, with that being the case, the redundancy set up on NVMe 2.0, or sorry, 2.m standards on both platforms. Okay, so we've got the first system prepped and running. So the first one I'm going to do is make sure that Windows Update is good. And we're going to initiate those updates, and we'll let this all burn through. And this is the first time this system has come up. We want to do the system updates first before we initiate the core backup. And meanwhile, I will switch over to the alternate system, which also should be done almost. Yes, it is. Cool. And I will go into, as soon as I get the mouse. I love that timing, don't you? There it is. Okay. Alright. Download and install. Okay, now APM. Okay. They've changed it. Power. Okay, and here we're going to set the power mode to best performance. We will then make sure that the screen can be turned off. I don't have any issues with that. Usually I recommend at about 15 minutes because it can get annoying, especially if you have screen lock involved. There'll be no device sleep at all. So we don't want it to go to sleep because that's an important detail, because the KVM will not respond effectively at that point in stage. So now I've got my card, now I've got my chassis running at a performance level, and I've got the spin down fairly minimized, and I've got energy saver mode off. Now, why did I do that? Well, because I want to make sure that when they're using the KVM, they're not setting themselves up for a lot of waiting, and that can happen if you're not careful. So, with that being the case, we're going to do the same thing with the other one. Yeah, see here I'm putting in the word power to get to power, sleep, and battery settings. And again, I'm going to change it from balanced to best performance. Screen and sleep. Move this up to 15 minutes for screen to turn off, and never to allow the box to go to sleep. Now this also saves you the what they call a hyper mode sleep allocation file. Oops. Well, that's the video driver being updated. Hang on a second. Yeah, there we go. And then we will flip this back. And now it wants a couple of Intel driver extensions, and we're going to initiate a reboot on that one. Now the next thing you want to do, once the system gets to a certain point, you want to make sure that you also set up your GPO's policies to do some fairly active recording, because point of sale systems have an SMB share. And so therefore you have the risk or the vulnerability of potential attacks against that share. Now because you're using a split Wi-Fi environment or a tri-Wi-Fi environment, that can be somewhat restricted, basically because of the fact that these systems are only connected by cable connectivity, not by Wi-Fi. And I chose that on purpose because I just really wanted to separate all chatter from the Wi-Fi from the high-speed network bandwidth, which we need, because we do a lot of backing up here, and we want to make sure that we're doing just that with that. So we want to make sure that you go into your MMC, and oh, there goes the restart. I might have to hold off. I'll let this do this. Yeah, that's fine. And I'll bring that up later. Restart now. All right, those are restarting. Let's go back. Now the accounting system, I'm just going to set up generic logging so that the basics can be caught. I don't need to have a lot of functional bandwidth on logs, but I usually increase the size of them so that they last a little longer. And of course you can set the rules any which way you like, based on activity, based on changes, based on modifications, and so on and so on. So let's see here. So that would be done by the MMC, and you would add in a snapshot. And here you would want to get computer, let's see here, policy objects, right there. I'm going to add that in. That's going to be for the local computer. And then we're going to go down here to the local computer. We're going to break these guys out so that you can see these. And we want to do this at the computer level. I don't care what anyone does. I want to make sure that I am tracking these activities in a specific format. And I'll do that by the audit, which is right here. I'll turn these on, successful and failure. Account management, successful and failure. There is no Active Directory audit logs. I'm looking for failures. Object access, not necessary. Privilege use, I want success and failures. Audit process tracking, failures, and system events, I want both. Okay, so we have that. Now we can go in here and we can set the restrictions on the users themselves for tracking purposes, but in this particular case we're not going to do that. We are going to instead go after the security rules. We want to go ahead and go in there, and we want to enable the admin status. All right. I'll change some of these. Okay. Policies look good for account control, security control, firewall access, right? right? Okay, so I've got a decent little rule here that's not too restrictive. Shouldn't impact anybody specifically. This will give a basic, robust footprint for what we want to do. And this will give us the ability of working with policy controls, access objects. The next thing we're going to do is the audit controls. If you look here, you'll see the audits. They're not. They're set basically. We don't care about Active Directory services, login failures. I actually like to see successes. Object access failures only. I do increase those. Policy changes. In other words, somebody goes and screws around with the stuff I just set up in policy. Okay, so this is good. All right, so we're done. Now what we want to do is go up to the MMC. Add another one for computer management. Yeah. Okay, and what we're doing here is under computer management, which is down here. We will be going into the tools, and we want to basically track event viewer. And in the app logs, we're going to change some things. We're going to go in here, and we're going to do properties. And we're going to increase the size of this guy some. I just like to make it 25. Apply. That's going to make the rule pretty significant. And the timestamp to be fairly significant, and I usually do 35 for security. Didn't like that. Liked it now. Okay, good. Setup, that's not a big deal, but I will increase it by up to 25 to keep everything fairly consistent, because we really don't want to see this ever change, if you know what I mean. Yep, that's good. System, another very critical one. I put this one at 35. You really don't want to see it change. Again, confirming changes are good, because this is where people screw up. Porting events, that one can be minor, but it's not really active or in use, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Very rare that you'll get telemetry in there. But this is very good right now for setting for this unit up in a clean footprint. And at this point in stage, we are in good shape. Here's the 2255 FCM, and we'll do a quick check on that to make sure it's healthy. I'm going to go ahead and let that run. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other box, but we won't track that. Okay, so this is the second system. It's doing its updates now, and we'll go ahead and flip this over. And it's finishing up now. It's doing HID and dynamic configurations. So that's going to go through the process of rebooting. While that's going through that process, let's go ahead and talk about how these interactive chambers will work. These doors are key locked, and actually you can see the keys sitting in the actual locks themselves, right there, right there, right there. And that's to make easy access when necessary, but also to secure this environment, because it is a garage, and you never know the people that you're going to work with. You always have to be very careful in that regard. So that's an important detail. Another thing also that's important is to realize that things aren't as strong as they appear to be, because this is formed metal. So it behooves me to go ahead and put a little bit reinforcement down here in this location down here, and I might put one down there as well, just to add a little bit of more flexibility on that part. So with that being the case, the other key factor here is making sure that we have our models I mean, basically what I mean model, I mean the way we want to formulate this for deployment is we want to make sure that it is clean as possible and as efficient as possible, because that little fan up there is the only thing keeping these two computers from overheating and any other gear that we put in here. Now, the footprint for the power, that will be done by what we call a a 1U insert, which is like this. And as you can see, it mounts right like that, except in this case, it's going to be mounted back here and at a certain level, and then a power strip will be attached to it to provide power for everything within the rack. And of course, growth. Can't forget the growth. You need the growth, right? But the key thing is, overall, this is going to be pretty tight, very lean. It has the ability of going up to 4 computers, but they would be small form factors follow-ups, minus the main box, which has hard drives as well as NVMe drives in it. This is the one that matters, unlike the accounting system, which couldn't be always rebuilt fairly quickly. Okay, let's take a look here. Okay, we're done. I'll do a restart. And if that's the case with that one, let me check the other one. It's cooking too, but it's not too far off. I'd say about 3 or 4 and 5 minutes off. We'll give that a minute. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're going through firmware updates and several other components. These are the kind of things you've got to get ahead of when you're trying to work for a business. They don't need this kind of overhead. They need you to be able to step in, get these kind of things accomplished and updated. That way, when it comes in the door, it's fairly ready to use. And that's the key secret sauce to this equation, is to make sure that that everything is as updated as possible, especially if it's brand new gear. As you can see over here, this gear is never been used. It's pristine. It's ready to go. Have a backup image of that clean image of what it looked like before it had anything installed on it. It'll be really easy to recover from, and you've got the latest BIOSes running up and updated. And about every 6 months or a year, you would come back and check those BIOS settings and let them be updated. But principally, your goal is to take all of those headaches away from the customer. That's why they're paying you the money that they're talking about, and that you can basically get to a point where you can get them up and running quickly. You can get out of there quickly, get all this gear installed, but also not be obstructive. Okay, so while that's finishing up, we're going to talk about cabling. So as you can see here, we have HDMI outputs 10 foot, and we have here, of course, the USB extenders, USB 3.0 open standard, and these are also 10 feet. There's an extender cable that will come out as well from these to give them the ability to reach a little farther. And the coupler set here, that's going to be a little tighter, but I think that's a good thing, because it's going to come down underneath here through those vent covers there, out the back and over straight across to the table where that switch will set, somewhere in the corner of that desk, which is not here, of course. And at that point in stage, this will be out of the equation. But it will have clean, concise cable feeds that are going to meet the requirements we need to have. Now, I also have a special power requirement. This ridiculously stupid looking power supply, but it's okay. It works. No complaints. It's just that it's going to require some management underneath it, which is what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to place that down here, out of the way. And of course, the other most critical thing you need to have is a book with all the documentation in it, because your customer is going to lose that information if you don't make it pretty much part of the enclosure. That's going to be the other key thing here, is to make sure that everybody doesn't lose anything as you're trying to get things done. So with that, let's check the systems. Okay, so we now have the two systems up and running now. And everything has been flash BIOS and set, and a master backup has been created of the baseline image. So one thing I'm going to do next is I'm going to create something I call kind of creative, and that is the difficulty of delineating when you're using KVMs is what system are you on. So in this case, what I've done is I've taken away the pretty picture in the background, which just eats up CPU time. And I created an icon, and this is for accounting, so it's kind of obvious it's about accounting. And there's the, there's the title of the company's name and all that good stuff. And this tells me that I'm on the accounting system. So over here, I'm going to do something similar on this platform. And to basically go out, and what I do is I will get, bring up browser and start uncheck, remove, continue, continue. Okay. Here, let's go out to Google because I just want to tick off Microsoft. And then what basically we're looking for is an icon. So in here, POS, icon, JPEG, and this is point of sale, basically, which we're talking about. And we can grab an icon here. I think this one's good right here. Or maybe that one. What do you guys think? I think this one's good. And I want to save that one. Now I'm going to save it as a JPEG. Now it's a web file. Can't use it. Darn. Let's see. Can I use this one? Yes, I can. Alright, so we're just going to save this generic icon down here. And then, I'm going to type in the company's name. And I'm going to grab that icon real quick. Hang on a second. And here we go. And I'm going to grab this guy right here. Save that image off. It's a PNG. That's okay. I can work with it. And we're just going to save it there. Then we're going to close this out. Now, at this point stage, you want to go into your browser for your Explorer side. Go into Pictures. Open this guy up, but open it with Paint. It's a little bit more flexible, has more functionality to it. And it's actually pretty good. I'm impressed. I like it. I think we do need to move it a little bit. So let's do that. I'm going to take it up to the top. Yeah, that's good. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to open up Action Tire as well. And I just want that as little of it as possible. So I'll go over here. Oh, shoot, that did not mean to do that. I meant to pick that one. Okay. And we'll minimize this. Jump back into this guy, and we're going to paste. And it's a little big, so we want to shrink it. And we want it to fit right down here. Actually, we want to center it. And then we'll move this guy in here. And we'll move this guy in a little bit more. And we'll move this guy up a little bit more until we've got a small icon. Once that's done, you want to do a save as because you don't want to mess up your old paired images. You want to create an icon and save that in Pictures. So when you close that out, you have yourself an icon. Now you can right click on that guy and you can add it to the desktop in the background, and of course it's distorted. It's to be expected. You got to go to your settings. Sorry, you have to go to your personal settings and personalize the background and change it from fill to center. Ta-da! Now you know that this is point of sale, and with that being the case, you also know that this is the accounting system. Ta-da! So with that, this is just a cheap, under $10,000. Actually, it was closer to $6,000. All your money went into the redundancy functionality. The infrastructure is already there. I built that a couple years ago. So the main tower has expense, but it's good expense designed to make it as durable as possible just short of 2 power supplies or PDUs. This footprint is very cost effective, and that includes the labor, so that's a pretty good deal. The customer base components for installation and configuration and setup, well, that's going to be done a little bit differently. We won't cover that in this. What we want to do is build a principal 2-station server environment that can act as a server for the clients and have an accountability system for accounting. And that's what we did. Well, this is Brad Dyke signing off. God bless. I hope you guys have a great week, and you take care. Bye-bye.